Hello, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all listening to Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. And just a quick reminder, if you miss any bits of the interview that we're about to do, this will be online, probably via our podcast, and also a version of it will pop up on our YouTube page. Uh, I'm joined today. I am privileged to join by a kind of a living local legend in the Kalamazoo music scene, Adam Danis, and we're going to be talking a little bit about this fundraiser album you and your band just kind of facilitated, put together. Before we do that, though, Adam, could you, especially for like the uninitiated, or maybe folks who aren't as in tune to the Southwest Michigan music scene, can you tell folks a little bit about your band, Fake Baseball?
Yeah, hey, how you doing, Wider? Yeah, let's talk fake baseball for a second. Fake baseball is a band that I got started with uh Maggie Heron and Jared Selner originally. It started out as a capstone project for Maggie's mat program final, essentially. Because she's a very, very gifted audio engineer. She's our primary engineer and producer. Um, and uh, she had this idea for sort of a sprawling, uh, bring all the homies in record to then do some cool highfalutin mixing to. And she brought Jared and me on to co-write it with her. And then it took us, we got together a few times and tossed some chords around in a couple of feels and sort of talked about what sound we wanted for it. But it took a long time for it to actually, see anything. And then around March of 2020, we suddenly had a bunch of time on our hands for some reason, uh, i.e., global pandemic, and um, managed to find cool ways to work together while maintaining some social distance. So we wrote and largely recorded a record together, mostly on couches, on porches, in for the better part of the second half of 2020. And we recorded it in summer 2021, and then put together a live band for it. Oh, and in the middle there, our keyboardist Grayson and I joined in and started helping us write that first record. And then the four of us played a vast majority of the instruments on the album, and then put together a live band with a couple of stunners. We got um, we got Grayson Nye is the keyboard player, and we scooped up Ethan Bausma, drummer from the jazz school here in Kalamazoo and at Western, and Matthew Dr. Mainframe Milo, uh, bassist, who people would know from a lot of acts around the area, such as Sasquatch and Bridge Band and a gallery of others. He's a prolific bassist. Um, and then after that was out and it felt really good, we decided maybe this isn't just like a project that we have for this thing, and we're gonna keep pursuing it. And now on the other side of the pandemic, we're in the process of actually building that following and so on. So it's been a really exciting evolution up until now. Getting to work with these people was, in a way, it was a sort of a super group. I was coming off of being with the Go Rounds, and we had Jared is the Sasquatch, and who of legend here in Southwest Michigan. Um, but yeah, we more or less got together with the understanding that we wanted to make accessible music that still sort of challenged its listener. So we came up with this sort of formula for making sort of off-kilter pop tunes, with a little bit of a jazz influence and a little progressive edge. And it's super, super fun to write music for this group. I love being part of it.
Oh, thank you, Adam. And yeah, just to emphasize listeners, it's like if you want like a funky little slice of the Kalamazoo music scene, definitely recommend checking out one of y'all's shows because yeah, it is just this bringing together some of the best talent in the city.
Oh,
So
that's so kind of you to say. I appreciate it, Andy.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so with that, let's talk a little bit about this benefit album. So the name of the album is Cartoon Covers by Michigan Artists, a benefit for
Hmm.
the Kalamazoo River Watershed Council. So just wanted to ask, what inspired y'all to put together this fundraiser album, and why is the Kalamazoo River Watershed Council important?
Well, the the record itself, the compilation, is part of a an annual outreach thing that we've kind of gotten ourselves committed to getting up to. Before we had even released our first record, we put out a different compilation of similarly of other different local and regional bands doing mostly Kalamazoo doing just covers of whatever they felt like, and that was to benefit Food Not Bombs. Because man, like, what's the point of trying to uh, get a following and give yourself a platform if you're not going to do anything of substance with it? So we decided to go with that first with really our thread. So we did that benefit project 2 years ago, and then last year we put on a day festival uh, for Planned Parenthood, and this year we thought that we would do something. We had already done a couple of things to raise money for social issues that we care deeply about, and we thought it was time to make the move and dip our toe into trying to throw a little bit of money at an ecological cause. And given the state of our rivers and the importance of the watersheds around Michigan in general, specifically the Kalamazoo River, uh, it's 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 a darned shame that we even have to be having this conversation uh, because across down Kalamazoo River on its own, we've got uh, multiple dumps that are set up like basically close enough to be basically on right on the water. We have different factories. Man, uh, paper recycling, the sludge that comes off of paper recycling ends up in the river. And most people will probably remember July 2010, um, a pipeline that was managed by Enbridge Energy Consultants LLC or whatever they call themselves, uh, ruptured and spilled just south of 1 million gallons of crude oil into a tributary off of the Kalamazoo River, and it spread for about 30 miles. And there's still toxic sediments that have washed even farther downstream, making it all the way to Lake Michigan at this point, 10 years later. And the possible ecological ramifications, I only say possible because it'll be 100 years before you can say exactly what this did to the wildlife and the plant life and in this area. And you know what kind of grinds my gears about it? I started seeing commercials for Enbridge uh, touting their commitment to ecological safety and keeping everything safe and clean. Um, and as if nobody was going to remember that they were dumping 1 million gallons of crude oil into our rivers. And one of the things that personally gets me particularly spooked about it is the I've read a fair amount of the possibilities of there being a generation for different wildlife, birds, lizards, so on, of infertility. So if in a small enclosed system you suddenly have a species that is missing a generation or is in that area wiped out entirely, that affects everything else down the line for for the rest of time. Um, and you know, you can if you killing a family of bullfrogs can have a huge impact, let alone 30 miles of it. So it's insane that we even have to be having these conversations. So not being an ecologist by any stretch of on my own, or any of us for that matter, the Watershed Council to us seemed a natural, if just easy pick for. It's like, well, you people know what you're doing. How can we help? And we're not ecologists. We're a bunch of lovey-dovey sensitive artist types. So what we can actually offer is possible fundraising. So we're gonna, you know, hopefully continue to do this a different cause every year. It'll probably be another live event next year, but don't hold me to that because everything's still very much up in the air. Um, but we were excited to get a chance to again do something more ecological and get in talks with the Watershed Council and see if there's, even if we don't raise as much money as I have in my head about it, the fact that this is gonna get through all the turmoil and other ways and all of these other things that we have to be upset and distracted by right now, our old problems are still problems. And making sure that things like our environment, things like holding people like people organizations like Enbridge to task, be still being upset about Flint, like all of these other things can't be taking a back seat. Well, you know, that's relative, I suppose, but um uh so want to make sure that there's still people advocating for this stuff, and uh a lot of artists who are also activists right now have their hands full for good reasons in other ways. um so we're happy to be able to carry this as far as we actually can for the time being, what such as it is.
Well, I really want to thank you for bringing that up because I think it illustrates that again, there's a very personal history, especially for longtime residents here in Kalamazoo. We were literally here in the community when that horrible disaster happened, and kind of the way that not only it influences what you're doing now, but pointedly, on your cover art, you have like this cartoon wolf. What's I think he's like has a couple of $100 bills on fire and he's dumping a bunch of oil into the river. So yeah, like these things all inform each other, and it wasn't just on a whim, y'all were like, oh, rivers are good, these things are very
Right.
current. I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into kind of one of the points you were just making, and so last week on our show we talked about we had this update. Speaking of Enbridge, they just got a permit from the Michigan Public Service Commission to move forward with Line 5. It's the pipeline that'll go through the Mackinac
Mhm.
Straits. They're still waiting on the approval from the Army Corps of Engineers. Sorry. But I was kind of just one kind of, maybe branch off what you were just talking about, how you personally feel about that pipeline, and also thinking about the role of artists and musicians like yourselves in resisting environmentally destructive projects like this. Even drilling down a little bit more locally, we've got this intermittent threat from a car wash that wants to be too close to Asylum Lake. So I was just wondering if maybe you could kind of think through that and tell us how kind of how you feel and kind of respond to some of that.
Oh, I forgot about the car wash. um uh yeah, in regards to line 5, I mean, this is a conversation that I feel like I've been having for as long as I've been frustrated about the Kalamazoo River spill. um uh it might actually be about that long. It has been a long, I feel like there's a long history of different activists in my circle, um rightfully uh rattling about line 5 specifically. I think that for me personally, and again, I am not an ecologist, and I would not claim to have any real authority on this. What I am is somebody with a platform, and that's what I'm capitalizing on. Uh, and I feel like it's another example of how we make ourselves so financially uh dependent on the ups and downs of any given market, and we're so tied to what gas prices are, and a couple layers down, what energy in general for numerous things gets used for. And this notion of infinite growth that we are really stuck to in our society. You know what, I'll say it. Capitalism Capitalism encourages infinite growth. In fact, it demands infinite growth, and infinite growth, and it's infinite growth on finances, which is, while it affects our lives, it is still largely hypothetical. It's not something that exists tangibly. So you're taking an intangible, infinite system and trying to jam it into a very finite system, which is the real world, the actual environment that we live in, and the air that we breathe, and the water we drink, food that we eat.
Okay. So there's a few technical difficulties, folks. So Adam, you're speaking again about kind of infinite growth under capitalism, how it loops back into what musicians like yourselves can do about it.
Yeah, what we are actually capable of, as I see it, is, we aren't necessarily people with a ton of information, though we can be a vector for that. We can provide that. We aren't, as artists, I've said multiple times now, ecologists. I'm not an ecologist. What we are is potential focal points in for socializing. People, like, every social movement that has ever been has had musicians and performance artists and graphic artists and poets and other kinds of scribes and all these different creative people, uh, not necessarily at the core, but as a galvanizing force in things. Like, I remember, talk to any leftist boomer, and they'll talk about that time that they, really had their eyes opened at a Bob Dylan concert. Um, so not to put myself or even any of my peers on that level necessarily, but what we are able to do uh is be the meeting place. And that's the easy part, at least. And then there's the other side, which is people like a good friend and honestly a hero of mine, Seth Bernard, who I'm sure in Michigan needs little introduction. Really incredible singer-songwriter and instrumentalist. I've gotten a chance to work with him a few times, but his where his true brilliance, where his strength lies, is in threading that needle of being an activist and a musician, and using those both as a vector for actual education. um like, that's a guy who will have the info that you want to see. He's not just giving you the link to the watershed council. Like, that this dude has done the reading, and I hope to get to that level of influence outside of just a being a an excuse to have a party where people are then talking. But every uh not every so many historically important movements started in pubs, started at concerts, started in speakeasies, started in cafes. um where people are is where ideas happen. And I think that's the most basic thing that a musician and an artist can do within uh in an attempt to show resistance resistance to these certain these these different systems that are frustrating to us. But there is more, obviously, that you can do, which is things like doing fundraising opportunities, which again is just an excuse to it's you use yourself as an excuse to get a bunch of people in one place or get a bunch of people listening to one thing or listening or hearing one message. So what we are as artists, um, you know, being less exalted than being like thought leaders, what we are people who are handed microphones, and therefore, if you have a microphone, you have a platform, and whoever's around you has to listen to you. And if and one of the best things you can do is encourage the people around you to talk to each other. And I think that these kind of things can really facilitate that. Again, that's why we try and do live events as well, for our community outreach thing. Um, and and things like doing this compilation, we're able to bring in, like, make it not such a dour affair. Make it something that a product that people actually want to have because it's fun to them, because they know they're familiar with these tunes, and hearing them put on their head in this way is this nice little serotonin dump of nostalgia. And I feel like that's an easy enough sell to just make it not a chore to put yourself in a place having these conversations with people. Um, and that is if people actually even read past, oh, here's a funny song that would be nice, and those people are welcome to listen as.
Yeah, I did want to mention too, this isn't just fake baseball, it's fake baseball presents. So y'all
Mhm.
recruited these bands from all over Southwest Michigan. You got people like Katy Needs a Life doing the Daria theme, Sasquatch and the Bridge Band, one of Sasquatch slash Jared's other projects, doing the X-Men theme, so on and so forth. And I was just kind of curious, if maybe you could speak a little bit about the artists that you recruited for this project. I think you spoke a little bit to why y'all chose to do cartoon themes, but maybe just like kind of the genesis of the idea, and who was who was warmly responsive to doing this collaboration.
Well, I'll say it was not a hard sell to really any of the artists to get on board, because it's a fun project to sign up for, and the kind of thing that somebody with a home studio might do just as a lark anyway. It was all people who the importance of the thing that we were trying to actually accomplish there. And we just kind of reached out to people who we had working relationships with, um, that we knew were down to clown, so to speak. We got a hold of we played a show with and became pals with Metal Bubble Trio over this last summer, out of Traverse City, who did the Doug theme. That band is fronted by Andrew Dost, who most people would recognize as being one of the members of Fun, the We Are Young band. Uh, and he's an incredible musician and such a and super lovely guy. And uh, we hit him up, kind of tentatively, because like, oh, maybe this is like whatever, he's slumming it with us getting on this compilation. And he was like, no, bet, let's go. He was one of the first people to have a mix to us. It was incredible. Um, and yeah, we got Jake Simmons and the Little Ghost on there, who we've been circling each other's orbits for a decade or more at this point. Uh, Jes Kramer, who is honestly an idol of mine, as a songwriter and as a performer. So incredible, their work. Uh, and really, like, everybody came through with the goods handily. I gotta say, my favorite is Birdfinger's version of Pinky and the Brain is just out of control. that Bird Fingers has long been. He's a good buddy of mine. We actually Bennett is his name. We went to high school together. But shortly after we moved to Kalamazoo, he became like he hit this genesis where he became my absolute favorite vocalist, and his voice only goes lower now. It's incredible. So yeah, I it was we did unfortunately have a couple of people who were, were really who were interested who just couldn't make the time to do it. Real quick, I'll go ahead and shout out Basic Comfort, who had a cool idea for it and did on getting us something, but they were working on their own album that they just released, which we had the album release party for last weekend.
Okay, well, it's a great album. I listened to it the other day when I was making dinner. It is, yeah, it's just absolutely delightful. I just two real quick last questions. Well, first, why did y'all pick Inspector Gadget, if I may ask?
Because Inspector Gadget, the Inspector Gadget theme song totally rips, is the primary thing. We tossed out a few ideas. Honestly, I was pretty married to doing Darkwing Duck, and like I was dead set on it. And then Milo, our bassist, was like, I don't know, you guys, I'm really into the Inspector Gadget theme. And I'm like, you're not wrong. Like, picking kind of the propaganda cartoon to do the cover of. But I feel like Inspector Gadget is on the level, you know.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely. I watched that one growing up a lot. Although I hope,
but
hey,
like
maybe
true
I,
true.
as a community member and a fan, I'm hoping we can get that Darkwing B-side at some point. Um, okay, so I'm just gonna tell folks, we will link in our show notes where you can find the cartoon covers by Michigan artists. Again, it's on if you look up Fake Baseball Presents, you should be able to find it pretty quick. And just one last thing, Adam. Are you and Fake Baseball playing any local shows in the near future?
In the very near future, we will be playing on New Year's Eve at Bell's Eccentric Cafe with Desmond Jones and Mighty Big Rig, and that'll be a big old time. Um, Before we sign off, I do want to toss in one caveat with the compilation. The window to have the money go toward uh, the watershed council goes until the end of this month. It's not the kind of thing that we can just keep up indefinitely. There's a lot of business end on the other side, and it to keep it up indefinitely would be somebody's job ultimately. So it's happening through the month of December, right up until um, midnight New Year's Eve. So people who and it'll still be available to listen to for laughs after that, but I really encourage anybody who's interested in the project just as a compilation, and of course, obviously, people who are interested in uh, contributing to the Watershed Council, uh, make sure to do it sometime in the next few weeks. Could be a fun little MP3 stocking stuffer. Maybe you get a couple of them and send them to your aunt and your stepmom and your little brother. But yeah, that's all on that. But yes, we will be playing on New Year's Eve at Bell's.
All right, Adam. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us here on Wider. I hope y'all are able to raise a lot of money for the Watershed Council, and I hope you have a fantastic evening.
Oh, same right back at you, Andy. Thank you to you and everybody there at Wider, the whole staff. I absolutely love the organization.